These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
Welcome in. Flagrant Howls on a Friday here. A rare Friday Kyle Theige appearance on this podcast. We're going to buzz through about 30 minutes and go sit down and watch the Masters for the rest of the afternoon.
I'm so excited,
sir.
I'm so excited. Flagrant Friday is kind of a cool thing too, but yeah, good weekend. It's nice out here on the West Coast. I'm guessing you got some good weather.
Dude, it's like 70 and sunny here the whole weekend.
Open up the windows, open up the doors, but don't go outside this weekend because the Masters is awesome. The course looks incredible. And as soon as we're done here, I'm just going to grab a pimento and cheese sandwich and a beverage and watch 71 hours of golf.
Yes. We will get to a sandwich ranking before the show is over here today, but we wanted to pop on and just talk about some of the latest news and happenings. Let's start with Karl-Anthony Towns.
Okay.
Because there's a couple little ownership things in here that I want your take on. There's the Tim Connelly opt-out news that we can get to, but Cat's returning tonight, at least as of right now, unless there's something that happens, like a setback during pregame warmups. And the Timberwolves are going to try and reintegrate him into this thing for the first time in like 20 games. Before the injury, they were the number one seed in the Western Conference. They have maintained essentially the same winning percentage. Some interesting quotes from Rudy Gobert and Chris Finch. I'll just sum those quotes up. These are from like 2 or 3 days ago. We talked about them with Judd on the podcast. But the summation is, hey, we love Karl. He's a unicorn. He's super talented. And we have learned some things and have discovered some things about spacing and movement and quick decision-making that we would like to maintain when Cat comes back. And the phrase that Chris Finch used was, there are some things that we've figured out the last couple weeks that we're going to need Karl to kind of lean into as well. So what do you make of him coming back? We both agree it's a positive that they need him playing at the peak level that he can play at for them to make a deep run in the playoffs. But 2 games at the end of the season and then boom, like a 7-game series, it's a really crunch timeline to try and weave this thing in. But what do you make of what's going to happen starting tonight?
I mean, simply put, because I think this is the 6th or 7th between you, me, and Dane, the 6th or 7th Cat integration pod we've had now. Simply put, they have no chance to do what everyone wants them to do without Karl. That's just like, so you can jump up, anyone can expand off that. Can they win a playoff series without him? Sure, they're 12-6 without him. But that Suns game, that Nuggets game, this team, in my opinion, like was able to hold down the fort without Karl defensively. Played some really good defense in that Suns game. I thought they defended the Nuggets pretty well for 3 quarters. But all season, the bugaboo, the Achilles heel of this current team, the 23-24 Timberwolves, has been offensively, man. It just gets weird. Even with the 0.5, second mentality, it's still weird. It's still not a great offense. So if it's not a good offense and you remove their second best offensive player, to me, it's like they need him back. Now, they need Karl to, I always think of that LeBron James, Kevin Love tweet where he's like, stop trying to fit out and just fit in. They need Karl to fit in and not try to fit out. He's got to come in. He's been on the bench, right? He's been watching these games. He needs to kind of adapt some of Naz's, just get the ball and either put it up with a quick release, put it on the ground. I'm not against Karl getting to the rim. I think their free throw rate has gone down a little bit since Karl went out, or just swing it, right? Just keep the ball moving, because if he starts getting into heavy isolation, heavy stagnation, heavy stickiness, I think Ant picks up on that as well. I think part of the reason Ant's looked a little better is not only because he's been challenged, but also because no one else on the team gets sticky with it. So they need him back. I would imagine they'll integrate him slowly, but that's my opinion. I think you probably feel the same, but again, I also agree with some of the things you've said or Judd has said or other people have said, Britt, that he does need to buy into this new Finchian type of basketball that they're playing. And I think he will. And if he doesn't, then Finch has to do what's best for the team, because this team has a chance to really make the finals if they, put all the dominoes in the right order.
Yeah, I saw someone put out the best 5-man lineups in the NBA with, minimum of 700 minutes or whatever it is. And the Wolves' original starting five with Karl-Anthony Towns is like the 5th best 5-man combo in the entire league this season. So it is, I mean, unequivocally, that is a great net positive starting lineup. I think Nas replacing Cat in some of those combos, you didn't lose a whole lot, but the depth that you gain by putting Cat back in the starting lineup, having Nas coming off the bench for the 23 to 25 minutes, both of those guys knocking down threes at a 40% rate. I go back to the phrase Finch used, lean into what we're doing here. We just lean into has become such a like corporate buzz phrase, right? It's like circle back. But in this case, it's true. Karl oftentimes, he takes the path of most resistance oftentimes on offense. Way too many times in the playoffs where you'll see him just try and take on 2 or 3 defenders on a dribble drive, and now he's on the ground and it's going back the other way, or there's an offensive foul. Dude, lean into the easy stuff. The ball movement, the spacing, launching threes, and move away from trying to impose your will on 2 defenders in the paint, right? Like, if they can just lean into the things that he does really well, and by they I mean he, then this team probably gets to the Western Conference Finals, Kyle. But on the other hand, if they don't, if he comes back and it's kind of clunky, and all of a sudden now you're facing the Suns in the first round, and we can talk about like some of the playoff seeding ramifications here too. If it's clunky and it takes them a few games to weave him back in and he isn't leaning into the things, then boom, you're down 2-0 to the Pelicans or the Suns in the first round. Like, I would say that these last 2 regular season games, the stakes are very high from a seeding perspective and just from a team chemistry perspective.
Yeah. That lean in thing was a really good take by you, because I went and looked this up this week, and there was early October. Remember, it seems so long ago that the season started because it's one of the longest marathons you can run. But Ant, like, there was a time right before the season started where Ant was killing it for Team USA, and in early November or October, the Ringer did a podcast that was like, I don't know if Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be willing to lean in and give the reins to Anthony Edwards. There was no issue there. Yeah. So for the people concerned about this, it's like, Karl leaned into playing power forward when Rudy Gobert was acquired. Karl leaned into letting Ant be the face of this team. He does need to show that again, that flexibility and that ability to just fit in and not fit out. But then if you believe that you and I are, idiots, and the only ones we can trust is Jim Pete, that's probably true. Jim Pete says every week that Chris Finch is the greatest coach this team has ever had. So if you think that and you believe Jim, which I do, then it's up to Finch to just pull the levers. And to your point, if this Karl stuff is not great, then just pull them. Just do what's best for this team. I also will say that these next 2 games are really important. But can it get any worse? They were down 21 to the Wizards. Are they really going to come out of the gates tonight against the Hawks that much worse? They were down 15-0 to the Suns. So I'm obviously more optimistic. I'm obviously more glass half full. But you're right. In my bigger thing, I said this to Dane earlier this week, is that there's no real politics at play here, in my opinion, because, and this kind of ties in, I guess, to our second topic about ownership. But if Karl comes in and it just doesn't look right, and those people are right, then Finch just does whatever's best for the team, and he plays Nas more, he plays Kyle more, keeps Karl on the bench until he's healthy. And what's that going to do? Make Karl mad and force a trade this summer? They might have to do that anyway. Yeah. So what's the, you know what I mean? Like, what are your fear? Your fear is not optimizing whatever you have right now in the kitchen to make the best meal. And I believe Finch will do that without second guessing.
Also, we should really be, instead of sort of, and maybe I'm guilty of lamenting how are they going to get Karl mixed back in here. I'm optimistic. I think it's going to work fine. And like we said, it worked great the first 60 games of the season. They were the best team in the Western Conference. Maybe it's a little rusty against the Hawks, but you now get Naz Reid going into the playoffs and Jaden McDaniels. And a lot of people forget that. Like, those guys, the Wolves gave the Nuggets a fight. It was only 5 games, but they gave the Nuggets a fight in most of those games without 2 of their key rotation players. So before we get to some of this ownership stuff and the Tim Connelly report, can I just quick rattle off earlier this week with Judd, I ranked the Western Conference playoff opponents, not just first round, but like all of the 9 teams that are going to be in the playoffs or the play-in order of preference. So number 1 being the team that I would prefer to not face right away. And number 9 being bring them on. I'll play them in a backyard chain link park. Like, so number 9 is the Kings. I'll take the Kings in it. In fact, it would be great if the Wolves could get the 2 seed and the Kings could win the 7-8 play-in game to become the 7 seed. I'm not saying it's a 4-game sweep. And I know the Wolves have had some trouble against the Kings the past 2 years. But I think in a 7-game series, I think the Wolves' size, I think the Wolves' depth would win out. You can fight me on any of these, by the way. But I've got the Kings as the most ideal team to face.
They're the least healthiest team of the 10 teams in the Western Conference.
Yep. Number 8, bring on the Clippers, man. I know the Clippers are going to get probably a home court in the first round. But the Wolves, so they're 3-1 against the Clippers this year. Oh, Rudy gets played off the court in the playoffs, blah, 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 blah. The Wolves have held the Clippers to 98.5 points per game in the 4 meetings in the regular season. I think the Wolves' size bothers the Clippers, and the Wolves can run multiple different defenders at Kawhi Leonard, at Paul George. I mean, Kawhi Leonard might even do like a load management day or something in the middle of the series. So Clippers are 8.
I agree with that. The only thing I would add to that is the Mavs are going to cook them. I think Clippers is locked in. The only battle now in these last 2 regular season games, Clippers are a game ahead of the Mavs for home court. The way that Mavs team is cooking, and I'll see where they are in your rankings. Mavs in 6, but that Mavericks team has figured it out since the trade deadline and acquiring some more big bodies. So I like them to beat the Clippers. But if the Clippers did come out and play the Wolves, I like the Wolves' chances.
Yeah, the Mavs defense has taken a big step forward.
Yeah.
I've got, so 7, I've got the Warriors. 8, I've got the Lakers. And maybe you could flip those around.
6, you mean? 8 was the Clippers. 7 was the Warriors.
Sorry. 9 Kings, 8 Clippers, 7 Warriors climbing up, and then 6 Lakers.
Okay.
So Wolves swept the Warriors. The games are kind of weird. Again, I think the Wolves' size and depth are a huge advantage, and you're just not getting the same level of Steph and Clay as you did 5 years ago.
And by the way, Golden State fans, there are, despite the app constantly breaking down, and we've upgraded now from profile links to just full-on photos on that app. But anywho, Warriors Twitter wants the Wolves in the worst way. So they are very confident in that matchup. I am also confident in that matchup on the other side. But I would have them 7th and then Lakers 6th because the Lakers have size. The Warriors don't have size.
And I do have that. So Warriors are 7, Lakers are 6.
Love that.
Lakers, I agree. If you get LeBron and Anthony Davis, like it's pretty tough that those guys are both feeling 100% healthy at the same time. But when you do get those guys at the same time, I mean, Anthony Davis against the Wolves this season, not counting the 4th game where he got smacked upside the head, 30 points, 17 boards, 6 assists, 3 blocks, 3 steals, and you have LeBron James over here. So, okay. At the time of this exercise, I had Mavericks 5, Thunder 4. I would probably flip them for this ranking.
Okay.
So I would put the Thunder as a team I'd rather face before Mavericks. Yeah. And then I'll give you the last 3 so you can just react to these. Pelicans are 3, Denver is 2. The team I least want to face is the Phoenix Suns. And we've only seen small sample size, a couple games. It's weird because like the Suns are a bad 4th quarter team, and we've seen them get smoked by other teams recently. But the 2 games we've seen them against the Wolves, and the fact that they've just got so many shooters, dude. Like Grayson Allen is the league leader in 3-point percentage. Royce O'Neal is a 40% 3-point shooter. And that doesn't even count Durant, Beal, and Booker. So they just have a bunch of dudes running around launching threes. And they held the Wolves to 87 points on offense. So I might just be overreacting to recency bias, but I'd rather not face the Suns in the first round. Nuggets for obvious reasons. The Pelicans, here's the thing about the Pelicans. Like, again, is Zion Williamson going to play all 7 games in a series? I don't know. Like, he's played 60-plus games in the regular season. But who do you run at Zion? Like, I could sit there with all these other teams, including the Suns, by the way, and say, oh, Jaden's a solution for this guy. Or you can run Kyle Anderson over here. You can run Anthony Edwards at Kyrie Irving or whatever at the end of a game. I don't know who you run at Zion in a 7-game series. He's averaging 30 points per game against the Wolves in his career. He's like 100 pounds bigger than Jaden McDaniels, so he just kind of scares me. So there you go. There's my rankings.
So just to recap quickly, if you were allowed to update them, you still would have Pelicans 3, Nuggets 2, Suns 1?
If a fully healthy Pelicans team,
Yeah. Okay.
they definitely scare me. Yes.
It's hard to argue the Suns take because the Wolves have played them twice and gotten thoroughly stomped in both.
Yeah.
First game was, again, after the whole doubleheader against Golden State and Chokegate and all that stuff. That was about as close to a punt as this new culture has had. So I don't really take anything away from that. I also thought defensively they looked really good against the Suns despite losing a week ago. The Suns followed up a pretty impressive performance against the Wolves by getting absolutely punched in the face by the Pelicans, scoring 32 points in the first half against the Clippers, and then grinding out a win in the back-to-back against the Clippers, against a Clippers team that started, let me get this straight, PJ Tucker, Plumlee, Bones Highland, Terrence Mann, and Amir Coffey. And the Suns were at full strength. I don't see the Suns thing. I know a year ago I called Denver Purdue. I'm going to do that again because Purdue was actually good this year and they made the finals.
You were right about Denver.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So it has to be Denver number one. It just has to be, to me, because even watching them the other night, Karl against the Wolves, if I wasn't a Wolves fan, I would just watch a lot of Nuggets games because they play so well. They know how to execute. They do some annoying flopping things too, right? But to me, it's Denver number one, Pelicans number two. I don't know why, but to the same thing you said, they just have an outlier in what
it's like a matchup matrix glitch or something.
Yeah. My phone just glitched. But yeah, I just think the Pelicans provide certain situations. The Suns, yes, they get up for the Wolves, and maybe they would get up for the Wolves in a playoff series, but the Suns might be the most inconsistent team in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had some good health. I mean, they've had Bradley Beal back. Nurkic has been battling some things, but they also just don't really have the size. Because I think if you can get Nurkic off the floor, I'm pro Nurkic. I think he's actually kind of good for them. If you get him off the floor, they don't have any sort of backup big. So, yeah.
So you would put the Suns kind of where? So we agree on Nuggets and Pelicans being in the top
I would
three.
go Nuggets.
You put the Mavericks in the top three, probably.
Yeah, I would go Nuggets, Pelicans, Mavericks, Lakers, Thunder. I just don't have the Suns in my top five. I know what the data says, and the Wolves have been really bad against them, but they were either not really trying or they weren't at full strength. You mix Karl back into that. Again, Naz, to our original point, has been awesome filling in for Karl, but no one can fill in for Naz. So it happens when you lose someone. So you put Karl back in, you put Naz back in. I think they would crush the Suns in the second unit because the Suns don't really have a lot of depth. You might be able to name some guys, but I don't think they're any good. Like you have Bol against Naz Reid. Like, sign me up. So to me, though, it's the Nuggets. I just think the Nuggets know how to execute. I also think they've done a really good job of roster building by getting kind of more advanced rookies or second-year guys that are a little older. I mean, Peyton Watson looked awesome against the Wolves the other night. They just present some matchup issues. And my big thing when it comes to playoff time, just like you would say covering the Vikings for football, like, who has the better quarterback? So Wolves versus who has the better player? The Nuggets do. And then some of the other matchups, who has like two of the three best players? That's my concern with the Lakers. I'm pro Rudy, but I think you would still say the top three players in that are AD, LeBron, and Ant. And the Lakers have two of them. So
do you think that's a fun exercise? Just real quick. So let's do Lakers. Who are the top five players in order in that series? AD at peak is number one.
Yeah, again, we're just assuming full health, right? And all that stuff. But I would say like AD.
Probably LeBron. You probably have to say LeBron.
Probably LeBron, then Ant, then Rudy, then Karl. So now, again, if you're doing a snake draft, it's like, well, the Wolves might have more top end guys, but
sure, that
team just has the right pieces. They've never made it work. I mean, they've been relatively healthy all year. I think AD has played almost 70 games. So it's not like they've been battling the injury bug. And now they're in 10th right now as we record Friday morning. So, but yeah.
What's wild, though, is they're in 10th, but it's an unprecedented year in the West where they're going to wind up with like 47 wins and be a 10 seed.
Yeah, 48 wins last year got you the 3 seed in the West.
Yes. It's wild, dude.
But like another way to play that game is if you did the Mavs Wolves, the best player in that series is Luka. Then like the next, in my opinion, 3 best guys might be Ant, Rudy, and Karl. I mean, Kyrie's cooking, but
Kyrie's offense always cooking.
But then
But
after
who's he
that,
guarding? Yeah.
who is like 6, 7, 8? Like you're gonna take Nas, you're gonna take Jaden over like Tim Hardaway Jr. You're gonna
But the Phoenix exercise is
it's
interesting
because that's true.
Because Kevin Durant,
And Booker,
I put Kevin Durant number 1, and then it's like I might actually take Ant over Booker, defensive purposes.
Okay,
I think that's more of a debate than like national. If I would have brought that up on the Bill Simmons podcast or something, or like I would have gotten cooked for that take. This is a safe space. I can say that on a Timberwolves podcast.
The way that podcast is going anyway.
But like you could make a case that it's Durant, Booker, and then Ant, Rudy. Where does Beal fall in this version of Beal? He's not in the top 5. I'll take Cat over this version of Beal.
I can't even say it because everyone's like, "Oh, you homer," but like I would take Nas Reed over Beal. And I've watched a lot of Sun games. So
you're not wrong. Well, okay, because you would say, well, but Beal shooting. Okay, Nas Reed shoots 43%.
Yeah. So it's going to be
like
interesting.
6 attempts a game or whatever.
It's going to be interesting. Back to the 48 wins thing. The West is loaded, and the teams that we thought the mid-season tournament was kind of fun. If your play-in tournament is some combination of Warriors, Lakers, Suns, and Kings, or maybe I don't think the Kings are going to move out of the 7 spot or 8 spot, but that's going to be some of the best basketball we're going to have in the whole playoffs. Like a 1-game, the 9-10 for people that forget, and we shouldn't because the Wolves have been part of it for the longest time now. 9-10, if it's Lakers, Warriors, that's a single elimination game to either stay alive or to have your season. You'd be the most embarrassing team in the season, and you'd be ripped, and it'd be crazy content.
And the best thing that could happen here for the Wolves, I think, based on the way we just rank these teams, Warriors, Lakers play each other. Well, actually, because the Kings could fall into that 9-10 game. So if you had a scenario where Lakers beat Kings and then Warriors beat Suns, so now Kings are out, and now the Suns play the Lakers. So then the Warriors would be in, which bring them on, right?
Yep.
The Warriors would be the 7 seed, bring them on, and the Wolves might be the 2. But then the Lakers and the Suns, one of them would eliminate the other one. And now and one of those teams would just be gone, poof. And the other team would play the Nuggets in the first round. You could, if this plays out, you could just dispatch of like a couple terrible matchups for the Timberwolves.
Well, and again, to Adam Silver's credit, this play-in tournament stuff has really amped up the level of competitiveness. Now, there's a lot of games, if you go look at your ESPN app, that are like 13-point spreads tonight. So like the Wolves is one of them. The Wolves are 14.5-point favorites at home against the Atlanta Hawks tonight.
Yeah.
Atlanta has a lot of guys on the injury report. This means nothing to them. They're locked into their seed in the plan.
Yep.
But Sunday, for the longest time, I've always marked as like a, maybe it's Leonard Miller versus Drew Eubanks type game for the WWE title. We might see both those teams actually trying that game because the Suns need to keep winning to try to maybe fall into that 6th seed. But all in all, this is just great and makes me feel better because the last 2 years we've been doing this pod, it's always been about play-in tournaments. And as of Sunday, the Wolves will guarantee themselves a top 3 seed and a week off. And I think that week off, back to integrating Karl, back to Ant's tired legs, all this stuff, that week off is going to be big. They've never had it before in this regime prior to a playoff run. And it'll give them time to rest, practice, and then kick off playoffs game 1 either next Saturday or Sunday. We won't know that until Sunday night when the schedule drops.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to just the latest ownership, soap opera, drama stuff here for just the last few minutes of this episode.
I love it.
And we'll get to your sandwich rankings too. But so it's now been reported by Shams that Tim Connelly, and by the way, this is a day after Woj reported that A-Rod and Lori, as part of the baton passing process of, hey, you guys are about to become majority owners, or you're trying to be, you got to submit some sort of a P&L, some sort of a budget. How are you going to operate this thing and propose it to the league, right? Well, Woj reported that A-Rod and Lori proposed a budget for next year that would slash payroll. It would Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, the Timberwolves payroll from like second luxury tax apron all the way down underneath the luxury tax. Maybe the lead was buried. Maybe they just want to trade Cat, and that was the headline, and we all sort of missed it. I don't know. And then the next day, report comes out that Tim Connelly, when he signed as general manager or president of basketball operations 2 years ago, negotiated an opt-out clause after year 2, which essentially would align his contract with A-Rod and Laurie either gaining or not majority ownership of the Timberwolves. So take either one of those and give me your thoughts on any and all of it. I think the Tim Connelly thing is really interesting because if it's now sort of aligning that if A-Rod and Laurie don't get majority ownership of this team, that Tim Connelly would just say, well, I don't even really know Glenn all that well. He wasn't part of the process of hiring me. Yeah, I've like been to his house for dinner, but I'm an A-Rod Laurie guy. Deuces. I'm going to go take over for Pat Riley in Miami now. It's going to be great, right? That is, that's a really, like a year ago, oh, he wants to flirt with the Wizards. Everyone's like, he made that terrible trade for Rudy Gobert. He can go to Washington if he wants to, but it would be a huge loss if he exercised that clause. So what do you make of all this, Kyle?
I have a lot of thoughts. Let's start with the Tim Connelly stuff because, yeah, that was reported this week. I also think to give Doogie a little credit, maybe that was there. It maybe was discussed a year ago when this Wizards thing was kind of coming around. I thought Doogie said, next year he could have a little more flexibility to leave. That would insinuate this opt-out thing. But we got to give some love to our friend Dane Moore, because yesterday on his pod, not only did he kind of confirm that, but he took it a step further, because when they brought Tim Connelly in, there was all this talk about like an equity stake or all this stuff. And that doesn't mean being like a limited partner or an LP. It would just mean essentially getting a cut of the profitability of this team, which is a pretty big thing to put in his contract, because it's like incentivizing Tim that as the team gets better, the team will be worth more and you will make more money. And that was part of the big game hunting, which we now know with a bullet was Marc and Alex's idea. And Glenn was very open about like, why would he come here? And Dane yesterday confirmed that not only is the opt-out real, but then he also went on to say that he has no reason to believe that Tim would opt out, but also that equity thing or whatever is no longer in the contract. So right now, that is not a thing that Tim Connelly has. He is just flat out, I think, making $8 million a year to be the president of this team. And from what I would tend to believe, would like to work for Marc and Alex, but the team is really good. Anthony Edwards is here. He'll probably stick around no matter what happens. But that's basketball related, right? Like, I know a lot of people, I'm one of them, you're one of them. Like, we shouldn't be talking about this. This is so not important right now. The players are not concerned. I heard Royce say this the other day, like, they're not distracted by this. That's true. But also, if you lose Tim Connelly, or back to the original Woj bomb, I guess the other day about cutting payroll, that's basketball related. So we do need to talk about it now, unfortunately. It's also interesting too, right, that when we had Marc and Alex on the pod, they said nuclear bomb. They dropped a lot of the same words, but they said we were shocked by this. So the last two times Glenn has either released a press release via the team or this Woj thing the other day, they both came right before like a Nuggets game, right? So as much as
he has a knack for trying to motivate the boys going into these Denver games, apparently.
Yeah, but I will just, so I'm like, I have it up right here, and yeah, the budget thing. So let's talk about that really quick. Last night after some adult treats and a glass of wine, I started sending you old wrestling videos because Phil and I love wrestling. So let's just hypothetical quick. I sent Phil 5 different wrestling videos, and one of them was Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, if Phil wanted to leak to the big bad media, Kyle, Thursday night, sent me a Stone Cold Steve Austin video. Well, what you're not reporting is that I also sent you 4 other videos of The Rock and Val Venus and the NWO. So with this budget thing, yeah, they probably did have a budget. I work in budgets, like, as my job, and we have multiple budgets that are like good news, bad news, middle, like, hot porridge, cold porridge, medium porridge.
Yeah.
It is my belief that that's what happened here, is like when they're going through financials, they're like, here's all these different things. And yeah, to your original point, maybe slashing payroll and getting to 171 is code for we're going to trade Karl, which we've been talking about for 12 months. So, but to close my whole little rant on that, the one thing that really got me, and again, I'm a little biased and I'm, whatever, I've talked to people the third tweet of that Woj tweet bomb on April 10th. After decades of futility. I don't watch the show too much, and I'm not great with memes, but that is the hot dog costume meme where it says, we're just trying to figure out who did this. Because after decades of futility, who was the owner during those decades of futility? It was not Marc and Alex. So again, I think both parties here are playing PR pickleball. That was Glenn's counter shot. I would imagine we'll have more coming out maybe this weekend. This is going to go on for a while, but I also think it's going to be expedited faster than some people think. I think you might see Marc and Alex at games.
I hope, dude, that would be.
I'm just saying,
and KG sitting under the basket too. Like, make it as uncomfortable as possible. Let's do it.
And to dial it back with that press release that kind of caught everyone off guard on like the 27th or whatever. It was short and sweet, but it said, Glenn said, I will continue to work with Marc and Alex to make sure that this team has all the resources to win. Well, then Friday, Marc and Alex said, we're not really allowed to do a lot or go to certain rooms. I do know they're allowed to go to the arena. Like, they are allowed to go to games. So I'm just telling you now, like, there's a chance come game 1 next Saturday or Sunday that Glenn Taylor and his wife are sitting by the bench, and across the way, it's Marc and Alex and, 50 Cent and God forbid me.
So just to boil this all down, because you and I are in full lockstep with most Timberwolves fans, I think that the Glenn Taylor ownership period of 3 decades is one of the most embarrassing, least successful train wreck 3 decades of NBA ownership in league history, at least going back like 50 years. Now, there's like Donald Sterling Clippers level of where he's a creep behind the scenes, So to Glenn's credit, this is what kind of gets me. Hey, at least Glenn's not a creep like Donald Sterling, and at least he never moved the team out of Minneapolis. Well, we're not talking about a Green Bay, Wisconsin-sized market here. It's a top 15 media market. The NBA wants a team in Minneapolis.
Let me interrupt you. I know you're cooking right now, so I'm
good.
Sorry. But because not everyone can pay enough attention to this or have their teeth sunk in. So I know that there are still people that just passerbys like, move the team, Seattle Wolves, man. Like, I have this on the best authority. That makes no sense whatsoever for the league to move the Wolves. Not just because of all the stuff you're saying, but this is really basic math. So tune in. If the Wolves move to another market, the owners of those teams get all the benefit of that. Okay. But if they keep the team in Minnesota and then just add 2 teams in Seattle and Vegas or, wherever, all the owners get these big fat checks. So the other owners don't even want the Wolves to move, or they don't want the Hornets to move. They don't want the Pelicans to move. They just want to add more teams because then and right now I think I've heard kind of Judd talk about this. Like, why isn't this happening? Because they haven't done the media rights deal. And that's going to come later this playoff series. And they're going to have a big press conference. They're going to be like, we're doing more streaming. We got $10 trillion. And then as soon as that's locked in place, then they're going to add 2 teams, maybe by August or September, that'll start to be the rumors. So I just wanted to clear that up because all your market stuff is so spot on, but there's also no benefit to the 29 other owners, whoever they may be, governors, if the Wolves just move. They don't want the Wolves to move. They want the Wolves to stay, figure out a stadium, which I think maybe there's more work going on behind the scenes than we know. Yeah. And then to add 2 teams, because then each owner gets $250 million, let's say, per team. That's a fat $500 million check that probably gets taxed really hard. I hope everyone filed their taxes. It's April 12th.
Yeah, it's not. You're 100% right. I think the only way where it would make sense is if the league, I don't know why they would do this, but maybe they want to make sure that, hey, we're not always bluffing. We will absolutely move a team if you don't get your arena situation figured out. If you don't get this, that. Is if you move them to Seattle or Vegas, let's say Seattle, because I think Vegas is going to command like a $5 billion fee or something, just based on everything. If you moved Wolves to Seattle and then opened up Vegas and another market,
for sure,
maybe Minneapolis, and you get an expansion team like 2 or 3 years later. But
I think moving teams is also a legacy thing, and I don't think Adam Silver wants that on his resume, like Stern or other commissioners in any sports
Sure.
have had on their resume. So
Yep.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. You're saying
No.
you're spitting fire. Minneapolis is not flyover country. It is a major market. Okay. When you compare it to even like the Denvers of the world and stuff. So stop, not fans of this pod, but outsiders, stop calling it a small market, because it's not.
No, it's not. I mean, Charlotte is a smaller market. Milwaukee is the 40th market, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is, it's outside.
I
the top
live in
25.
Portland.
That's a small market.
Not a major market.
Yeah.
People know me here. It's stupid.
But
Like
if we're just simplifying all of this, Glenn Taylor has been an atrocious, terrible NBA owner for 30 plus years. And so the only fear at this point, I think, now that Alex and Marc have proven they can build a culture, they can make a great hire, they can swing for a home run and land their big fish. They can get buy-in from the fan. Like they've taken a lot of great steps as minority owners or guys who are driving Glenn's car while Glenn spends the money, right? So to me, the only two questions are, because I do not want Glenn Taylor to own this team any longer than is procedurally necessary. So the only two remaining questions are, and they are big questions, and we just answered one of them. Would Alex and Marc move the team? Because if the answer is yes, then I think most people would say, ooh, I don't want that. I don't want door number one. If they're going to move the team, hey, Glenn Taylor gets credit for two things, remember? Not being a creep and not moving the team or selling the team to somebody that would move the team. The absolute lowest possible bar that you can clear as an NBA owner, right? So are they going to move the team? But the second question is, do they have enough liquid or financial flexibility to operate the team? Once you've bought the house, can you pay for the landscaping upkeep? Can you pay for the association dues and all those things, right?
Me right now as someone who's buying a house on something. Like, wait, I have to now pay for the people that come get my garbage in my apartment. They just did that. So
you got to pay for the cable bill. You got to pay for the electric bill, all this stuff, right? Are they going to be house poor NBA owners who want to just immediately strip down the roster and the payroll and not pay luxury tax, and they're just going to be unable to operate this thing? Because at least like Glenn Taylor, to this point, Glenn Taylor has, at least he'll pay some money once in a while. He'll write a check for Tim Connelly if somebody else does all of the work to find Tim Connelly, right? So those are the questions. Will they move the team? And do they have enough money to operate the team long term?
Not a reporter. I think we've cleared that up in the 7 years I've been doing this, but I'm just going to kind of stake whatever reputation I have. I think you know what I'm trying to get to here. Money is not an issue, from my understanding. I don't think it was an issue in getting the third tranche payment submitted. I believe in and Adam Silver did a press conference the other day, Board of Governors meetings this week, and he even said, we're probably not going to do any more of these 24-month payment plan. Long.
And of course it's Glenn Taylor that is the one NBA owner that's like, let's do a 3 benchmark payment plan over 2 years when the franchise could appreciate from 1.6 to $3 billion in value over that time, thus creating resentment.
And during 24 months,
ridiculous.
I mean, I'm guilty of this. I made layaway jokes because it was always my understanding that was like Marc and Alex were like, we'd love to buy the team, but can we just make installments? I think it's been sourced out and confirmed now from multiple parties, way bigger than my payroll. This was Glenn's idea. Glenn wanted to do the 24-month payment plan thing. So, but that, is what signals. I mean, 3 weeks ago, I made a Drake reference to Broke Boys, which then A-Rod brought up on the pod. But like, I don't believe money is a problem. I don't believe they missed any payments. Now, again, 24 months of anything. Did you misstep? Did you forget to dot an I? Did you forget to cross a T? Sure. But this is kind of where it ties into my real job, working in contracts and grants and stuff. You have to have a material breach here, right? So if Alex was late for a Zoom call with Marc and Alex and Glenn, that doesn't give Glenn the right to be like, bleep it, not selling the team anymore. Like, you have to have.
What if, like, and this is a purely hypothetical question.
That's what we're very reckless right now on a Friday.
So I'm going to ask you a reckless hypothetical question, and I want to hear what your answer is, because it seems to me that Glenn confirmed on Chad Hartman's radio show like 2 weeks ago. Chad said, does the fact that the team is worth $3 billion now play into your feelings about wanting the team to not be for sale anymore? And he said, yes. He confirmed, yes, that is that is part of the reason why I'm not wanting to sell the team for $1.6 billion anymore. But you can't just decide that without some violation of the contract that is ironclad black and white. It's not a contract that says, hey, we're going to make some payments over a couple years and then we'll all just kind of revisit whether we want to do this. No, it is an ironclad contract, right? So is it possible that Marc and Alex either missed or came up short on a benchmark of some kind, call it, you're supposed to pay this much money by this date, and they were either a little short on the money or missed a date, and Glenn said, that's okay, let's keep it moving forward. Let's, whatever, like, it's okay, I know you guys are good for it long term, let's keep it moving forward here. But then earmarked it in his head, ooh, I could circle back to that in 12 or 15 months because technically that was a violation of the contract, even though we're going to keep it moving forward and see what happens.
Let me answer a hypothetical.
Why would Glenn feel that he can do this if there wasn't a black and white breach of the contract?
I don't know. I think you can Google Kevin McHale, Glenn Taylor. I think there's some stuff there with business dealings. I think you can probably get down a rabbit hole of Kevin Garnett, Glenn Taylor Google searches with some business dealing. I mean, and again, I know I'm biased. Like I am at the medical presentation, and my first slide is here are my conflict of interests, right? I understand that, but I'm just trying to say, I know, you are in the market. You've got I know the things of the past that Glenn Taylor has done that don't always look rosy from a business standpoint. He is, we can say he's a bad, he is really good at business, even if that means he's a real bad, business guy or whatever. Outside of Alex Rodriguez's baseball stuff, I don't know right now what those two, him and Marc, have done that would make you doubt them other than what other people have said about them.
Well,
because I'm just going to say the financial thing, again, more will come. I have no doubt in my mind that they hit the financial things. And it was reported that one day when I was in Hawaii that Shams was like, Marc and Alex submitted this financial paperwork. I think we're going to need confirmation on that. But hypothetical, what if when it got to the deadline and the Carlyle group, who everyone has heard of now, backed out? And they backed out because they, go look them up, have like a $600 billion portfolio. And some of that money is like managing player assets. Like they work with NBA players. So maybe there's conflict of interest stuff there that the NBA was like, you know what? We're not super comfortable with you kind of jumping in right now. But the press release there was all parties mutually agree that that wasn't the right time. So Glenn might have seen that and been like, there we go, broke boys. And not known that Marc and Alex already had the Dial group in their back pocket as a backup. Like, we're not just looking at one equity firm. Like, we're going to get this across the finish line. So again, more will come out. I am just a small pawn in this, but I have no doubt that that they reached the financial benchmarks in my mind. And then I don't know, too, Phil, man, say what you want about Alex Rodriguez, but he played baseball for team. Like, I don't think he would just come in and be like, okay, now we're going to nuke this team that we built. A team that has been confirmed that, like, they got Tim Connelly. They were the ones to give out the coaching stuff. Like, they were the Jaden McDaniels impetus to sign him. They wanted to get Naz Reid. Now, again, was it their financials signing the checks? Maybe not. But they're either the dumbest business people on earth and like, well, at some point, we're going to have to pay Tim's third and fourth and fifth year salary. Or they're like, yeah, we're going to be okay. We'll give you 10 budgets. Don't just report on the Stone Cold video that I sent you.
The Val Venus video is the one that I personally
That one was
enjoyed
crazy. We should talk about that later.
Dude, I was like 12 years old watching the end of Monday Night Raw. Like, are they really chopping Val Venus's you-know-what off with a machete right now? Wow. And then you had to wait till next Monday night to find out what happened.
I know, that was the good old days. No social media. It's like a buried alive match. I was like, oh, wow, they literally just killed The Undertaker. That's crazy. I will say one thing, because Jace Frederick had this from the Adam Silver press conference, but this is just Jace's tweet. Silver was asked about Lori's assertion that all that was left for the sale was NBA approval when Glenn Taylor called it off. Silver, I can't say more other than that comment is at the heart of their dispute. The dispute is precisely that, as to whether they had acted within the window.
Yeah.
In my opinion, being a little reckless, if they can prove that they did act within that window on the major material things agreed to in the contract, it is why I continue to say that I think when this is all resolved, that new ownership group will be the majority ownership group of the team. That is my opinion.
Yeah. Well, there's a huge next step, though, beyond determining whether they acted within the window, and it's the other 29 NBA owners have to sniff all of this out. Do we have any indication based on any reporting or conversations? I don't. I'll just back up a step. Before Woj reported the budget nugget that we've talked about here, I had 2 or 3 different conversations with different people from different areas of this sort of fiasco that hinted very strongly that this news was going to come out at some point, that that there's, whether it's a budget or that these guys just don't have the financial flexibility to operate. So this has been like a concern behind the scenes with some people for a while. Now, is it all Glenn Taylor propaganda? Like, this is where a lot of this is sort of behind curtains and whatnot. But my question to you is, and I don't have any steam on this, if this gets through the legal process and it's determined, hey, Glenn, you're wrong, dude. You jumped the gun with that weird press release. Marc and Alex did hit all the benchmarks. They did fulfill the contractual obligations. They are set to take over. Are the other 29 NBA owners unanimously in lockstep saying, yep, Marc and Alex, come on board. Congratulations. Glenn Taylor, farewell. It's been a great 30 years. Because that's a step that there's really, that's not a black and white step. That is 29 NBA owners that can basically say, I don't know. We either like you or we don't. You know, Mark Cuban tried to buy a baseball team one time, tried to buy the Texas Rangers like 15 years ago. And they said, you know what? We don't really like you, Mark. We think you're a little too brash for what we're doing here in Major League Baseball. What is your sense, I guess?
One word. Walk-tell. I believe Marc and Alex have pretty good representation on the legal side. Walk-tell was also the ones that played a role in getting Donald Sterling to, remember that? Like, we thought that was going to be, he was going to glue himself to the Clippers floor and that was going to drag on forever. And then all of a sudden one night you got a Woj bomb that he's out, he got his money, and we've never heard from him again.
So you're saying Walk-tell could even have influence just with like the NBA Board of Governors? And
I'm saying that there's other NBA owners don't want to create a situation here that down the road when they're trying to sell, that they're going to open up a can of worms into. Because, you know, I keep hearing, you know, these big tech words and technical words like litigation, arbitration, mediation, court. I would be shocked if this gets to court, because when you go to court, you open up what's the term, like discovery, right? And now you're digging into text messages, and now you're digging into personal. These guys at those levels of any sport that own team, they don't want that. All those
Does
guys.
Glenn Taylor send text messages, do you think?
No, he just carrier pigeons, sponsored by the Star Tribune. $3.99 subscribe. No, I don't think it's going to get to that. And I also don't think the owners want to create some sort of, not precipice, but some situation here where, you know, when you go to sell now, you're going to have to, you know, have your pockets dug into. I don't know why the NBA wouldn't approve it if they get to see what I would imagine Silver and his crew have to see is like, I mean, they're probably, dude, I just bought a house, right? I'm just full. They had to literally access my bank records. I have to show bank statements to get a house, to get a loan, whatever. They're doing that same stuff for these guys. So if they can prove that they have the money and the financial payments were made, you know, if someone missed a meeting or got a little, you know, ate too much food in the new owner's suite or whatever, that stuff is not a material breach of this deal. So that is why, again, just an opinion based on what I've heard and what people are reporting is that it's going to have to be something else. And, you know, I don't know who's perfect. I don't know who's going to run the team well. That's all I care about. That's all you care about. That's all fans care about. But I just throw it back to you. What, since this news broke 24 months ago, what have new ownership done that would make you concerned? Well, compared to the decades of futility that would make you concerned.
Agreed. I keep going back to my 2 questions. Are you going to move the team? Yes or no? And I think we both agree the answer is no. I think there's going to be an arena situation at some point. Like, one thing that I had heard a year and a half ago is that as they were putting together a group to get majority ownership, and they were at least in the initial phases of discussing putting together a separate group to build out an arena plan, a real estate / arena plan, because they know that at some point you can't operate inside Target Center.
And they've seen what U.S. Bank, I don't know how that was funded. That was publicly funded, right?
U.S. Bank Stadium was the most publicly funded NFL stadium in history at the point of its building.
But they've seen some of the other stuff they've been able to do with that, right? Like concerts and all that stuff. I believe, this is just completely myself, that if this ownership transition were to go through, that soon after you would already start to hear some rumblings of a new stadium. But my belief, again, I'm not even the most important person in this apartment, let alone in this media sphere, that would be as much privately funded as possible, and that there's already tracks being laid down to upgrade from what is, Target Center is like a third home for me, but it is not one of the best arenas in the country, and they need to upgrade that, even with the renovations they did last couple of years.
But until that group is put together, and because it's one thing to say, of course you're going to say, we're going to privately finance this, but at the end of the day, if we're talking about a $1.5 billion arena project, that's a huge, you just put together a $1.5 billion group to buy the Timberwolves majority ownership. I'm just saying, I go back to my two questions. Almost anything is better than Glenn Taylor owning the team. And the only two bars that I need the new ownership group to clear are, please keep the team in Minnesota, and please operate this franchise into the luxury tax when the team is ready to win and go deep in the Western Conference. And if you can do those two things, now obviously I want also culture building, making great hires, but they've already proven a lot of that stuff in the 2 years of minority ownership. So now we're kind of back to where we were 20 minutes ago. But if they can clear those two bars, if they can answer those two questions, goodbye, Glenn. Get the hell out of here. You can still come to games. You can sit in your little sweater vest. That's fine. And at the end of the day, here's the irony of this, okay? At the end of the day, if this sale doesn't go through and Glenn Taylor is being deemed as the one who, he saved the franchise from the broke boys or whatever, right? I'm just I don't want to relitigate everything we just talked about, but is that true, or did Glenn Taylor pick the wrong horse again 2 years ago? No matter what, it falls back on Glenn Taylor.
When this originally broke, a lot of people just didn't want to talk about it because Britt Robson is kind of the GOAT here. And he's like, I don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about basketball. He's right. But with the Tim Connelly stuff, the stuff that Shams reported, the stuff that Dane reported, that leaks into basketball stuff because, again, after decades of futility, this thing is finally on the tracks. And it doesn't take a Law & Order fan, which I am one, to dive back and see, when did the decades of futility stop?
There you go.
It was when Tim Connelly, Marc Lore, Alex Rodriguez, and others were folded into this thing.
Yep.
It's been the least chaotic season ever up until the last couple of weeks. It's been the second most successful season in 2 decades of futility. Again, more is coming out. Maybe everyone's lying to everybody. This is PR pickleball. But we like stats on this. We like facts. And there are more facts in one camp right now than there are in the other. But we'll see what happens. You and I might own the team 18 months from now.
Boy. I just want to sit in the room that's being talked about, the private little new ownership room that took over some of the media room that Glenn was not happy that those guys apparently built out that room. I just want to sit in there one night and watch a half of basketball.
I know I get to sit in media seats. I'm very, very blessed and privileged, but I just want to sit courtside once. So again, if everyone here loses and everyone has to stay away from the arena and there's 6 open seats, I would like to use one. I would sit next to 50 Cent, who is one of my favorite rappers. But quickly, because I'm done. You're done.
Yeah, we said we were going to do 30 minutes. It's now 50-some minutes.
I'll do it in 12 seconds.
Sandwich power rankings.
Happy National Grilled Cheese Day to those who celebrate April 12th. I told you before we recorded, 3rd best sandwich ever created. Number 1, any and all breakfast sandwiches.
Oh, yes.
Just love a good breakfast sandwich.
What's the protein? What's the meat you're putting on your breakfast sandwich?
I like bacon. My wife's got me into some Impossible meats. Sausage would come in 3rd. Not a ham guy. Not a ham on Christmas. Not a ham on a breakfast sandwich.
Ham is tough with the breakfast sandwich too, because sometimes you rip the whole ham out, and that's why I do prefer the sausage patty over the ham. It's just cleaner when you're biting into it.
Number 2 would be a BLT. Just love a good BLT. I think that might be the most controversial of the sandwiches.
I don't think so.
And then number 3, a good grilled cheese. Now, if you said that grilled cheese is naked and by itself, and doesn't have any tomato soup, then I'd probably lower it down the rankings. But if the tomato soup was in the building, grilled cheese comes in at number 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can throw clubs, chicken sandwiches, burgers, whatever. But those are the top 3 in my eyes, and it's not even up for debate. But I respect what your opinion is.
I feel like there was an egg salad sandwich snub in there somewhere, but we don't have time to debate at this point.
Well, that's Jim.
Yeah. We'll make Jim. Actually, Jim should rank these on Bally's if the second half of one of these games this weekend.
Yeah, Jim, if they're up 25
yeah.
tonight, I need to know your fourth favorite sandwich.
He's Kyle Theige. I'm Phil Mackey, and this is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, Flagrant Howls.